the first guest on the, we're going to just do this all at once. So Martin Peter, we know you from having led the innovation from the finance ministry. Please join us on the panel. Having had a law background and having worked in banking for 10 years, one of the things I most appreciate is your background in compliance and AML, because this is a huge issue when we talk about fintechs. Barbora Ruščin, we just met, a global citizen who has lived in a number of different places. Barbara's entered the banking world, I think, what, in September?
Half a year ago.
Half a year. 6 months, she's seen the banking world with clear eyes, having been in various fields, from boutique law firm, but also the entertainment industry. And it's a newly created position now as head of user experience and user interface. So I think that's going to be an eye-opener for us. Sarunas Legeckas, I think he's even shorter at his position at N26. I think he started September 1st. It's a newly created position. He has also been quoted by Google. New York Times is one of the top 100 fintech influencers. I'll just throw that out there. And he's been also an entrepreneur in various businesses on the digital front. And what I found most interesting now is that you've also worked from advising the Ministry of Lithuania on labor issues, which is a huge question mark for many people as banks go digital, to having covered now 18 countries and seeing all those changes. And then we have Tomáš Reytt. So now he's at mBank and Czech and Slovakia, having come from banking as well, from the Erste Group. Saw quite a bit, went to PVC, ended up at PVC seeing even more, and is now at mBank. I remember is one of the early forerunners of digitalization. And finally, not to be undone, is a man who's seen even more, Lamber Voortman, who is giving digital loan mortgages, and I think his company with his software is managing 45 million, and has worked with some of the most interesting banks from Spain, in various countries across Europe, and I think in the US as well, and Asia, to a lesser extent, but getting there. There's a great interest in many of the banks right now for the type of software and loans. So come up on the stage. I'll leave that there. I just need my notes.
So you want to sit in the middle?
I could sit in the middle, exactly. We'd have a little bit more diversity there, Yes, I have some critical articles here because, so one of the things that I've observed in the last few years has been especially acceleration of change now in many of the banks. Now, some of you have come from banks who haven't had that painful legacy, but others have not. And we have seen right now also in the Western European world, but also in the Eastern, dramatic changes in creating an adaptive organization, an agile organization, it's not just about partnering for digital products. So I'd like to begin with Martin and ask him what kinds of things do they see the government's doing to help support the digitalization movement and the modernization to keep banks competitive with other companies, with fintechs.
I think the most important thing is dialogue, and it's not just with the regulators and the banks or innovative companies, but it's also the dialogue between the regulators on the national and also on the global level. The dialogue between the regulator or the public and private helps to understand the movement or the new ideas, the new or challenges that the technology poses to the regulation and the financial system as such, because you see that we can mention Libra. Before Libra or Facebook announced Libra, virtual currencies were not in the spotlight of the regulation. But afterwards, when the possibility came that 2 billion people are potential users of some sort of virtual currency, the discussion started. Now the issue is the discussion really technically, all the parties really understand what the technology brings, what are the risks, what are the potential gains from such a technology. So this is very important for the regulators to have the open approach towards banks, new companies coming to the market, and to discuss with them what are the models, what are the technologies used, and to have the possibility to understand in order to evaluate the challenges and also the gains that can be done. And it's also very important to discuss between the public sector on the national and European level, because we are part of the EU. And you definitely know we have Commission coming with the regulations or drafts or initiatives. We have the ESAs, so ESMA and EBA, also IOPA, coming with their ideas how to regulate things, also touching virtual currencies, but also touching InsurTech, also touching new payment methods. So very important is to understand and to discuss and to exchange information. I think the openness for discussion is very important in order not to come with the regulation that will kill the
actual
industry.
functioning. Yeah. And we do know that they probably do a lot of training for you as well, because as we know from some of the banking crises in the past, that some of the bankers themselves didn't understand some of the products they were selling. So I think this pushback is important. Barbara, I want to go to you next. You've recently entered the world of banking from the world of the real world, and the giant telecom certainly understood its customers. What are your observations about the industry, and what with this cross-country experience you've had, what can banking learn from other industries?
First of all, thank you, Sarunas, for being shorter in banking than I am, because I really felt like I'm going to be the top junior here in this discussion. So now I feel like I'm really, I know something after half a year. I guess if I should compare it to telco, which is where I spent most of my last few years, I'd say that a major difference is that telco used to be a tech company from the very start, maybe a different technology, but it always was tech-centered. And therefore, I think the transition that we went through in the tech was changing one tech for a different tech. And that's much easier than what's happening in banking, the way I perceive it right now, which is that most banks really see themselves still as financial institutions first and foremost, and now changing into tech-centered company. It's not just it's a business model, it's business operations, it's human resource, it's talent management with that connected. It's a completely new world. So I think this disruption is substantially larger, and I think it's a big mindset change, which makes it so hard and takes so long. Now, with the entertainment industry, I don't like to compare. A, I didn't spend that much time there, and B, we used to say, with show business in Slovakia, there's very little show and definitely no business. But if I compare maybe to States, where show business is a huge business, I think that if you look at companies like Blockbuster and Netflix, that's exactly what could happen to incumbent players right now, right? So Blockbuster was established in the mid-'80s, had most of its presence being really physical, had really hard time changing into digitally centered organization. I mean, they've done some digital efforts, but they didn't do that mindset shift, right? They were not digital first or digital only. And that Netflix comes at the end of the 90s and just completely runs them to the ground. And that's exactly what's happening right now, right? So there's a lot of new companies coming on the market. They're not coming, they're already here. They're really we're paying the dues now. But they don't have the problem with the legacy systems, they don't have the historical heritage, they don't have to go through the mindset shift. If we don't jump on the train real fast and start like changing those mindset and maybe changing the kind of talent that we have in the organizations or helping the talent to evolve to something new, we're going to end up like Blockbuster. I don't think that, we're going to be talking a lot of today about AI and UX and all of those things and CX. It's not a defensive argument. It's not something that's nice to have. You either have it and survive or you don't have it and you're going to be gone in a few years.
It's an interesting comment because in medicine, it has become a very high-tech business. And doctors are never hesitant to move into the high-tech, but bankers, by their human nature, are more conservative on that.
It's a relationship business. It's,
Yeah, and there's a fear factor. Thomas, you've seen a lot of things behind the scenes also when you were consultants. What do you have to say in terms of where you see the transition? Because this whole point about, well, a bank like mBank, N26, they don't have the legacy systems. There's been observations by regulators, not in Slovakia, but in other countries, where they've mentioned that the complications of a large bank are that through all of the acquisitions they made, they have parallel systems running, which is a big waste, but they can't get rid of those. But they do have the money to invest, which sometimes a smaller bank does not. So can you comment a little bit on this whole transition? Because mBank has been a complete fast mover on that.
So good morning also from my side. When discussing about the digitalization or the way to become a fully digital, I think this is our DNA. So when we started a few years ago, like 12 years ago, here in the market in the Czech Republic, we still believe we are the digital bank. So the discussion we are internally having right now is what does it mean? Because just a few years ago, we are completely also internally trying to change our mindset. Instead of digital is equal to internet banking, nowadays to the mobile banking. So instead of digital, we call it like to become a mobile. Nowadays we have like the mobile first strategy. But I think in the very near future, not only us, but all the market will drive the maybe mobile digital strategy. On the other hand, we see that there is still an importance of the physical channels of the physical network, even though from the perspective of the backbone it might be vice versa. So we are trying somehow to extend also our physical presence at the Czech Republic or here in Slovakia, because we still do believe that even though there is the adoption of the mobile, adoption of internet, whatever, within the society is still increasing, there's plenty of first the servicing things that the customer are coming to ask. Do want to help them before they even will be able to adopt anything concerning these digital things, and will be to do it by themselves without any additional support. If I can shortly comment to some fintechs also, that's we are looking all the time about the market, what's happening. We also been established a daughter company for that, trying to get in touch with the fintechs company, and if we see trying to pilot it, so internalize, pilot it, and if it's work, trying somehow to acquire and let's say put it into the service for the internal operation or for the customer. So that's our approach, how we want to, let's say, develop ourselves, explore ourselves, our thoughts and our services also from the other fintechs area, not only working within the banking.
What's interesting is you mentioned the physical presence, because one of the comments that I've had two opposing comments. One was that Airbank has actually more branches than a bank in Czech that was not considered a digital bank. And on the other hand, Prima Banka prides itself in not being digital and understanding the customer experience by sending everyone to a different branch, far enough away that they have to work there for a week every year. And I find that's a fascinating thing, because in some cases, we're seeing smaller banks adopt a hybrid version of on and offline businesses for different target groups, you know? Jan, and if you have a comment on this coming from I know 3 weeks on the job is a little tough.
No, I can just to defend myself why I'm here. So I'm not that new to the financial industry. I'm new to the position at N26 as a general manager for 18 markets in Europe, including Slovakia. So I worked at Barclays Bank for 5 years. I was part of a crypto project for 2 years. So it's Barbara, sorry, but it's so just to kind of defend and just have some credibility why I'm here. And another thing to maybe kind of explain, and Barbara mentioned quickly about like Netflix and Blockbuster. So for instance, especially at N26, Netflix and Spotify are the companies that we aspire to, right? We say that this is the model we're going to. We are a fully licensed bank, and this is not to be confused by anyone else, because we get asked, you know, we don't get any compliance or regulations that a regular bank has. It's not true. We have exactly the same regulation and compliance that we need to apply to, but we have a very different service model, right? So we are operating everything centrally from Berlin as a real tech company. So even though I'm general manager for 18 countries, we have teams working on different countries, but we don't have local presence because we don't believe we have to. And we do everything centrally. We do have an app where, you know, hopefully users can do whatever they have to do on the app. And this is what we believe is the way forward. So I cannot comment on other strategies that mention we are half digital, half mobile, half present, half not present. I cannot comment on that. You know, we have our strategy. These guys are smart and have their own. But you know, this is where we're going, right? So this is where I wanted to represent. We are very, very mobile-only bank that operating like a real tech company. So.
And also, one of the things is that it's one of the leaders that everyone is also aspiring to be, because we do see banks saying, oh, we want to be the next N26 or whatever. So, but also one of the things that I found very important here is that unlike many of the banks that are very locally grown and then try to be digital, the top-down opportunity of being able to have one system is also essential, I think, for creating this change and being able to grow. By the way, N26 was an example of a kind of a sensitive situation in that the National Bank, in terms of giving licenses in Austria, was given a slap on the hand because it was started in Berlin, which is, of course, a very nice place to start a new business, but they apparently tried to talk to the Austrians beforehand, and as a result, the government policies changed in looking more carefully and having that dialogue, going back to your point, yeah? Jan, you had something interesting to say about innovating in areas where banks did not have the time to innovate. Can you elaborate a little bit about that in terms of helping how the banks are making this journey, kind of leapfrogging into a different generation? You've had some interesting projects with ING, ABN AMRO.
Sorry. Yeah, first of all, I want to say I'm Dutch, but I'm for 10 years in Slovakia. And we have a company of 100 Slovaks making fintech for our customers. And I would love to say that there's so much talent in the ecosystem of fintechs and companies in Slovakia. And I hope we keep them all here, because the talent should reside in Slovakia, because I think Slovakia has a great opportunity to become the sandbox country. Not only a sandbox for certain customers, but a sandbox country within Europe. So I think together we should beat other hubs, and I don't want to mention names because Amsterdam has also a great hub, but I think Bratislava deserves also to be a place in the European fintech arena. So to come back to your question, I have to promote Slovakia also a little bit, because not only my own country. Yeah, we did a couple of projects with big tier 1 banks, and the struggle on one hand is political challenges they have internally. I don't want to comment on that. For sure, what we see in big companies, they are struggling with legislation, and risk and compliance is our biggest enemy. Usually, the chief of operation of the marketing officer, they want to expand the business, they want to go with innovative things, call it digital. And they said, okay, but you have to beat risk and compliance because they are withholding everything. I'm not mentioning National Bank or etc. So, but that's usually what we are encounter in projects. But I think in these big banks, they should more look towards customers like small fintechs do. And we have also small operators being our customer. And they look what does the customer want? What is the new customer journey? And even though we have discussions like, okay, but what about the seniors? We had a project in the Netherlands where we had big discussions with a French bank and said, okay, we will go with a digital process, signing loans for seniors. And they were super successful. They did, of course, they tested a hybrid approach with a wet signature on the page, on the contract, they had to send it back. But they found out that the seniors in Holland, they were able to sign with a digital app the contract, and the conversion was much higher. So, and sometimes in big banks, there's a traditional view on legislation, politics inside, etc. So, I don't say it's everywhere, because, but it's more like they have more legacy. It's not only the system; it's also the people, the structure. The relationship with national banks, etc. And the challengers, they have other struggles. So this is my answer to both sides of the coin, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I just may jump in.
Please.
I really want to react on what you said. Sorry. That Slovakia has the potential to become a sandbox or like innovative hub. I really think so. I think you can see from people sitting here, it's full audience. Yeah, I can see this also from the people from the ministry who work with me, my team, my colleagues that are very enthusiastic. We want the people to stay here in Slovakia. The talent. Is there anyone from the UK embassy? Not to go to London, yeah? Okay.
He just left.
No, really to let people to stay here. And I know it's not easy because you have more easier or more opportunities elsewhere in Europe, also in other countries like Baltics. But we really want and we really try to make the environment as smooth as possible, concerning all the risks, all the regulatory issues, because you said, and this regulation, because you said it is mindset, Blockbuster, Netflix, different approaches, yeah, different approach. But this also applies to regulators. You have people who are dynamic, like forward thinking, and you have people who are more conservative, you know, thinking about stability. Okay, but then you have to face the situation that the market and the world goes without you forward, and you will stay somewhere in the past. Yeah, so I think it's about mindset. The most important thing is also for business, also for regulation, is mindset, and it's good if they come together and they discuss, because otherwise they have different approaches, different expectations. It doesn't work now.
If I may react, because I think Slovakia, especially from combining National Bank, regulator, Ministry of Finance, the Data Protection Authority, within banking we have so many rules to comply within different ministries. But if you are able to combine these and to work as one team, that's for banks would be perfect, because in other countries it's, but for this you have to go to that ministry, and for this ministry it doesn't allow you to do this. And in the end, I think all banks want to serve their customers and don't want to overcredit them. I'm more in the lending domain, so nobody wants to have bad loans and everything. Right. So you just want to make your customers happy. And of course you want to comply with any regulation, but it has to be in sync. And there, I think Slovakia can also leapfrog other fintech areas in Europe, because you are a smaller country and smaller of existence. And what I mean by that is that you could easier connect between ministries and really make that step forward.
More intimate
thank you.
dialogue, yeah. And, and as we're discussing this, let's connect that to the customer experience and the cultural differences, because one of the comments I heard from a major board member in a German bank, one of the big ones, he said one of our hindrances in the whole aspect of digitalization is not our internal processes, and it's not the finance ministry. It's actually the system. They haven't converted a government system into e-government. So in Germany, you have to file something in person if you had a child, et cetera. So there are other barriers that have to keep track on that. And so moving over to the customer experience and cultural openness or not, and I know you work in design thinking as well. Let's hear some comments about the customer experience, and also if you would comment on, I think you were advising the government, and they're very innovative there in Lithuania as well, and because they're a region that is very innovative. So Barbara and
Cool. Thanks. So first of all, starting with user experience in general. So I think the whole shift is to the benefit of the user, right? There is no different flip coin. We just said, I don't think there is like a big argument. This is good or this is bad. You know, we are like regular people, the everyday users of the banking or financial services that we're gonna benefit. It's like, you know, let's see what Uber did to like taxi industry, right? Before that, taxis were unregulated, smelly, too expensive, and so on, right? And this is now what we have. We have, hundreds of Ubers, but also regular taxis that had to step it up. So I think this is what's happening, right? And this is what, I'm not saying that N26 is doing just a great job in customer experience. I think all across the board, everyone stepped up the notch, right? So
yes.
That would be my small comment. In regards to because it's a bit confusing. I come from Lithuania, but I work in Berlin, 26. But Lithuania is also very active in fintech, and it's positioning itself as a fintech hub of Europe, and has a big sandbox and provides a lot of e-money licenses, banking licenses for Europe, for banks across the world, like a gateway to that. So I had the chance to work with it and understand how we can help, what fosters innovations, and what's the collaboration between the central bank, Ministry of Finance, and the other local players. So that would be my take. So.
I'm not sure what the question was really.
About remember we talked a little bit about the openness and the cultural openness on the one hand regionally, but also on what about improving that customer experience? What is the greatest challenge for you, seeing it from another perspective?
Yeah, I see that as two very different questions. So for the cultural openness, I don't know if you guys heard of the Gerd Hofstede guy, but I'm a big fan of his and his 6 cultural dimensions. And what he done in the 80s for IBM is that he measured cultural dimensions of different countries and then said, these countries are very hierarchical, these are very masculine, these are very feminine, these are indulgent, these are not. And then also measured Slovakia then later on. So I think that gives you a very good feeling. I'm not saying he's 100% correct in everything, but it's a good place to start. And he tells you that Slovakia is a very hierarchical country. It's very masculine, which means status-oriented and achievement-oriented. We're not very indulgent. We're pretty prone to change. That's a historical heritage, right? Like we've been screwed over for centuries. I mean, we kind of got used to the fact that, the truth changes depending on who's the ruler. So I think that we're pretty well positioned culturally for the kind of change, but also being so hierarchical and being so masculine, we expect there to be leaders who are going to be the one to lead the crowd towards the change. So I think that everybody who does that mind shift change in the banks needs to be aware of the cultural heritage that we come from and what it's going to take for us to make that leap. Now, when it comes to the UX or CX, if I should go broader in the question, it's very exciting for me because it's a new department in the bank. I mean, it's not like Tatra hasn't done UX before, done a ton of it, but used outside contractors to do that kind of stuff. Being inside gives me a great advantage because I see the whole ecosystem, right? Those products and those services do not live in vacuum. They're not islands. They're part of an ecosystem and of an experience that holistic, and it goes from digital back to analog, physical, right? It goes from product to service and back. And you need to be able to work with the whole thing if you really want to make it work. You can't just take one thing out and focus on that and make it, pimp it up a little bit and then leave the rest the way it was. So it gives me great advantage, but it's a tough journey because you have to take that design, you have to put it inside of the company. First, the theory tells you that first you're going to be somewhere on the border. Like, people know that there are creepy people, there's punk people doing some design stuff in the bank, and they're weird, and, and they want everything differently, and they have a lot of different opinions. And plus, we also sit in Košice, which is like, right? So we're like just a bunch of problems. And then you need to get that. You need to get that design from border into the center where everybody knows that this is how we do things now. And they're not going to do all of those things in that way, but they're going to be aware that something like that happens, and they're going to come to you for advice. And then you need to spread that advice in the organization, right? So it's not like I'm working in the design thinking, it's more like we're working with design thinking as one of the tools. And we need to spread that kind of thinking and approach all over the bank to make sure that whoever, because you don't want to be another bottleneck, so whoever's working in the bank and creating a new product, a new service, optimizing, needs to be thinking in a certain way. And you're the kind of like the enabler for that change to happen. So it's a very exciting journey, but a long one.
I know that your organization is making a transition to an adaptive and agile organization. How has that helped you to spread the word? Because that is the issue between traditional banks, and I'm sure you've seen this, the decision time, maybe 24 months versus 24 hours in a more agile and a more streamlined bank. Because I'm wondering, doing so much in Slovakia, and we do see that Tatra Bank is almost a jewel in a crown, one might say, of the RBI group. Would you have an influence also back into headquarter to be able to have a bigger stream? If you're seeing something here that's relevant, can you influence the headquarter as well?
A lot of questions there as well.
Sorry.
Thank God I speak so fast.
Me too.
Now, when it comes to agile, I think it's an important transition, but I think it became a little bit of a buzzword, right? Like, everybody's talking agile, very little people know what it really means, and even less people know where it makes sense. Right? Which is a whole different discussion. Like, there is a reason for waterfall, and it makes perfect sense in many instances. You shouldn't do everything agile. Now, where it makes sense, and that's in the places where you need to go to the market really fast, that's a perfect test case for agile. But we need to understand two things. Agile really is correlated with a lot of cultural things, but it's really a technical norm. So in order to be able to be agile, you need to have two things. A, you need to be able to deploy really fast, rapidly, which means modular infrastructure. And we're in IT discussion, right? Like, do you have a modular infrastructure that, instead of releasing new updates every 3 months, allows you to make instant changes on a daily basis? Right? So that's question number one. And the second question is, do you test with your users constantly? Constantly, not once in a while, not once in a year. You don't measure NPS once a year. You measure everything on every touch point all the time, and you take those numbers and you turn them into insights and then into action plans, and then you actually act upon them, right? Which is a nice cherry on the top if you actually listen to your data, right? So that it's a huge transition. So it's not just about like rearranging people in squads and chapters and tribes and and call it an agile. You need a substantial investment into infrastructure as well, and that's a big decision. Again, we're back in the business model and business operations.
Exactly, and I'm sure you have some comments on that. And in fact, I was going to say, you talked about tweaking every moment. I love this article that was in the New York Times about somebody who was kicked off Facebook and wanting back on, where they actually kicked out people that were bona fide users in an effort to kick out the fraudsters, and they couldn't. they actually had to, one guy actually said, I'm now doing something illegal in order to get back on again. I'm doing what they accused me of, because in their case, that constant tweaking the back end of things wasn't quite paying attention. One guy got through to Facebook only by pretending to apply for a job so he could speak to someone, you know? So it shows you that how even, they get in the news for that, but it shows you for a bank it would be much more disastrous to have this kind of thing in the news. I'm sure you have some observations about the whole adaptability, deployment, quickness, and the costs behind that. Do you want to go first? Microphone's over there.
I can start. So we are also within the mBank trying somehow to transfer ourselves into the more agile style. I think somewhere it's going quite good, and especially in the IT development there, where I see really it's working and it doesn't make sense. Somewhere it's even more tricky when it comes to the other bit of the bank, especially the product managers and everything. But at least I haven't seen, or I did not see a big difference between the waterfall agile and the agile. This is about some of the techniques that people are using, and agile also see more as a like marketing label. But what is important, and what we are primarily trying to focus are like a few elements. First is customer insight, to make sure that everybody within the company will try to think first about what kind of impact, what the customer would say about that. So make sound like 180 round turnaround about trying to look from the customer shoes or customer perspective. The second is measurement. So in the past, there was everybody comes and says, let's do that. Customer would appreciate that. And nowadays, we are trying somehow to persuade our people at least to somehow put it on the paper, try to calculate it. What are they seeing? Does it make sense or does it not make sense? So at least to think even more broadly whether there is a logic behind. And maybe thirdly, which I like the most, is MVP, so the like minimum like value proposition, and this is probably there always will be some limitation about the resources, about the capacity, and about the other bits, but we want to move forward. We want to do a lot of things. So what is in every individual bits like this minimum, the customer would really see the difference, would really appreciate it. So that give us a let's say the proof. Whether is it working or not, and if so, we can move forward in that. So to try to implement it quickly, check it, let's say measure it, and then move forward.
Yeah, I fully agree. If I add from my experience, the model-based of the modular-based approach, we are reinvesting now our platform to go to API-based or feature-based. To make, because traditional in lending you have origination, servicing, and credit management. That are the main pieces. But we are now building a lot of APIs, so to speak, and I know Tatra does it as well, because we think that the future will be banks, or it will be a whole ecosystem where financial products will be advised, consumed, etc. And we want to be ready to have as many features out there so that our customers, primarily banks, can choose what they want to use, in which way, in which of their customer journey. And to coming back to an overnight change, we had a situation in Holland as well, where the lending market is very competitive in the Netherlands, and one competitor was implementing a new product, and the customers on our platform, we are running on AWS, over the weekend, we were able to come up with a better product, mainly due to the basis we have, the modular approach, and they dived under this competitor and they stayed in the lead. So that made us proud, being business technical people.
Yes, because I have to try to keep on schedule, we're now going to go flying into blockchain and crypto. Plus and minuses. Some people say, it's J.P. Morgan has their own cryptocurrency. There's pluses and minuses on both. I had asked you, and perhaps you might want to comment, what the ministry might say about blockchain and crypto, and what Tatra and 26M Bank and what your observations are, just quickly.
First of all, blockchain is not just cryptocurrencies.
No, I meant as two separate questions,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. So blockchain, I think it's a very interesting technology that can be used in the financial market. There are, do you hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of use cases. Actually now, there are possibilities how to make things work on blockchain. Also, considering the capital market, considering the databases of the financial institutions. So considering blockchain as a technology for databases, I think it's very, very good, very interesting one. Regarding crypto, we'll see. It's very dynamic, and you know that the regulatory discussion started after the Libra. From France, there is a very strong no without regulation. We will see. I think the outcome should be people who do the regulation or will prepare the regulation, they have to understand what they are talking about. If not, it will be a disaster. If yes, then I hope the regulation will come with the proportionate manner, so it will allow actually cryptocurrencies or crypto assets or tokenization of assets to happen in Europe in a regular or in a way that will be regulated and that will not pose threats towards customers, towards stability of the financial market. Because I think, that's my opinion, tokenization of assets is a possibility to boost the economy. We are overbanked, we have underdeveloped capital markets. This could help capital markets to grow here in Slovakia, also in other countries, and allow small, medium enterprises, also big enterprises, to get another avenue of fueling their businesses. So I believe in future, but regulated, and the regulation should be proportionate.
I don't know if this is necessarily my topic, but hard to speak about crypto at this point. I mean, interesting thing, very speculative. We're a highly regulated business. I don't know if that's something that we're necessarily looking into in the next few years. We'll see. I mean, we'll see if Christine Lagarde's words about regulating will come true. If yes, might be an interesting venture. Blockchain, substantially more interesting. If crypto remains as stable as it is, because that might have some influences as well on the quality of the technology or the stability or the belief, trust in the technology in the first place. I think Tatra and generally Raiffeisenbank International is very well positioned to play with technologies. We're more on an experimental base at this point, I would say. We do have the Elevator Lab and a lot of other things where we kind of brush up with fintechs and can look into technologies like that. There's definitely a very interesting way of applying it from mortgages to blockchain IDs, a lot of different things and applications. At the same time, and this is like my very personal opinion, I think that we have a lot of basics to fix first before we go into cherry picking speculative and interesting technologies. And also, most of people that I know that are into crypto or into blockchain specifically want to stay away from regulation and from Big Brother and from incumbent banks. And right, like the whole point of having crypto was to walk away from traditional financial markets. Right. So now telling them we're going to co-opt it. And they're going to love it. I think we still have some things to solve
learn.
there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now I know that some of you are not doing work in those fields, so I'm going to go to some of the questions we've been getting from our audience. Yeah, the one I believe is intended for you because it's from. I don't know. You said your name. I don't know if you want me to announce you. It's how do you approach compliance questions, eventually dialogue with local regulators across multiple countries without having a local presence?
Yeah, so we have a banking license from a European Central Bank, and we use passporting for all other countries. We are approached by regulators in each country if there is a question. We, of course, are heavily approached and regulated by BaFin in Germany in particular, where our headquarters is and so on. So I don't know. That would be my very like high level answer. I guess I should contact my regulation and compliance department that we're working day to day on this and could comment a bit more. So.
And there's another question which I think is very interesting. Do you see a role of fintech in making the financial system greener, more sustainable, and supporting climate action? Now, this had been actually one of the issues we wanted to cover today, which is about, we know you just had a fund, a green fund being limited. Who wants to take this question about fintech supporting a more greener investment?
So definitely not Bitcoin supporting the greener.
No,
I think the energy
Fintech.
used to mine the current Bitcoin is use the same energy as maybe as the size of a country like Slovakia, to be honest. So it's not even close to being green. So very small comment.
Do you want to comment on it? Because you just released the green. We noticed a few years ago, I have to say, that there was a huge interest in Germany and Austria and Switzerland in sustainable investing, and now a huge interest in cyclical investing driven by private wealth clients. Now, I don't know their demographics, so I can't comment on whether they were older, who had extra money or not, but we did notice that Raiffeisen just yesterday announced that they released the green bond.
So 3 short things to make it also local. I think it's the biggest hype that green ever had historically, right? Like it's the topic right now. And when I say hype, I don't mean it offensively, right? It just really is something that
It's come of
has a lot of
age.
traction.
Yeah.
And has an amazing momentum. Secondly, I think we should do it because it's the right thing to do. Regardless of if customers are pushing us or not pushing us, it should be just part of CSR and just social responsibility that every bank has. Because primarily we should do CSR not for what customers want from us, but from how we respectively and responsibly want to do our business. And thinking about those things, I think, is important. Now, surprisingly, most of the research that I read for Slovakia says that clients don't really push that much for green. Like green is not the #1 thing that they worry about. They worry about fairness. They worry about, how you treat your employees, how you treat your. Pontus has done and is doing a huge research on that every year in the Business Leaders Forum, right? So I think we should do it because it's the right thing to do. I don't expect Slovak customer to come massively and bang on our doors to be hyper green, but I think we should definitely pay attention there because it's right. Right?
That actually leads me to a question I wanted to ask you, because there's been a couple of articles recently that came out about how to create a purposeful bank, which was, defining a purpose that feeds society and not just having a singular mission of feeding only shareholders. So have you, I know you're looking very confused now, but have you considered this? It's something new. I know the green theme has been forefront. I think you're right. It's probably not from a local point of view, but from a more international point of view. A certain wealth customer is interested in that. But what about a purposeful bank, which is more holistic in the sense that it treats its customers in all sets of its stakeholders and fairly? Can you comment on that? Didn't think I'd shock you, but
maybe I will first start some comment on that, let's say, green strategy, because how we are trying to somehow approach this is about and I fully agree that currently, if you're looking at the customers that not for here in Slovakia or the Czech Republic or in Poland, this is not the let's say most important things they wanna solve right now, even though. We split it internally into two bits. The first is, and I think all of these green things is about also the adoption and about the understanding what for the customer should look for and somehow to distinguish between the offers. So we want to, let's say, we are just before the launch of some internal program for the customer to start with that, and in parallel we are discussing how and what we should bring to the market, or should we really promote to that we as a bank would like to be a more green. Or so this is going under the discussion, and I think let's say the adoption of these eco thoughts even within the society is extremely important.
Okay, so that feeds into that. There's a couple of questions here which I thought was interesting. Once fully digital, who takes care of clients without access? Because one of the things that digitalization does is, on the one hand, it does help inclusion, because we've seen this with some of the Asian banking. But on the other hand, it could also lead to exclusion as well. So do you have a comment about that? Those of you who are fully digital. And the second question is about cybersecurity and asking if a fully digital bank has additional issues with cybersecurity, and perhaps you have a comment about that too, Martin. So the inclusion of people that may be excluded by digitalization, maybe you want to comment on that?
Maybe I would just repeat what I said at the early beginning. We are aware of that. That's why we are also wanted to, let's say, strengthen our physical footprint, because this is also like one of the missions, somehow to be there once the customer need us. So yes, I can confirm that there might be a occasion when the customer is really can be without any access, and what to do, what for. So that we want to be there to support him. And the second question was
about the cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Yeah? This is tremendously important issue. And it has more dimension. One dimension is somehow what we are trying to do is to educate the customer, what to do and not what, and primarily what not to do. And you wouldn't believe what the customer are able to do. Secondly, we are trying together with the fintechs invest into the systems, which, especially in the mobile, which helps our customers somehow to block their application when the apps is investified that on the device there is some horrors or anything which can affect the security of the customer. But for us, it's a really important issue. So from the every eco dimension, we are trying either to look internally or with the fintechs to support us somehow to make sure that the customer will be safely treated safely with us.
I'll just shortly comment. Cybersecurity is a critical issue because more you open towards digital, more you're vulnerable. And I can imagine that this is the cost that will rise in the time during the time. What we can do in this, I think it's more about the education. As you said, you educate your customers. We just started, colleagues of us started a huge effort to increase the financial literacy among the people. Cybersecurity being one of the issues that needs to be really. You need to educate pupils really on the elementary schools because they will be open and they will be using these technologies throughout their whole life. And regarding inclusion, this will be the risk because we have a generation gap in using the technologies. Some of the banks will be fully digital. Okay, they will not be for the whole population. That's it. And regarding the green, I can totally understand. Like the priority of the banks is to make profit. It's not to save the planet. Of course, if they are responsible, they will try to go green. I think it's more about the customers that will come and that will require, that will ask questions. But more importantly, is about other institutions in the economy and society to do something with the green economy or sustainability of the economy for the future.
Right, but they're actually talking more, I think, about investing in green bonds and this sort of thing.
It's not the right. It's not the right situation for it. No.
I think it just may be a little bit too soon. I think we're waiting to see how many businesses are going to be more sustainable in their approach to their manufacturing, for example. There's two last questions that are here, and then we have to close because of the fact that we are already 8 minutes over time. One was for you. Your main products are payment cards, Sarunas. Are you going to step into the loans business? How do you control the risk when doing business online? And the second question has been about, and it's not to you, but anyone who is doing fully digital, how are corporate loans conducted on a fully digital basis? So I think you're stuck with the first one.
Okay, so we are based in our headquarters based in Berlin, in Germany. So of course this is our home market, and back in Germany we provide a big variety of financial services, including loans, savings accounts, and so on and so on. I am very confident that this offering will be spread across other countries as well. So these are now across some main markets like Germany, France, UK, and so on. We are going towards this vision of becoming like a platform. You know, we want to be Amazon of financial services. So what we want to do, we want to work with partners such as Jan mentioned, integrating and using already existing products with our user base. So for instance, we're using TransferWise for international payments, right? So users are just doing the money transfers. They think they're doing it in 26, but actually we are using infrastructure and product of another fintech. So this is our aim, where we're going, and we have this, of course, closer to the vision in Germany, but this is going to be spreading, and I bet it will hit Slovakia with some more financial services in the nearest future. And what was the second part of sorry?
It was about corporate lending being conducting corporate lending on a fully digital basis. That was the question.
Can I first comment
yeah?
on this one? Because I thought also in the question was, how do you underwrite a fully digital process of lending? Our first digital lending customer was in 2000, so it's a long time ago. And I think primarily it's important to have the risk management under control. So, of course, there's another AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and this kind of stuff. These buzzwords are coming up even today. But I think the primarily responsibility in the lending process is to gather all data, to get as much external sources available. And these days, you have a lot of data sources. So, and I'm not only talking about the social media reports, etc., but I'm talking about the credit bureau, commercial parties, etc. So you can, from a risk appetite, do a good underwriting with your digital loan business fully online. I'm pretty convinced. I think that it's too long to speak about it, but I'm happy to share during the coffee break on a one-to basis our experience.
That's a very interesting point, and indeed, you're probably helping quite a few people on the digital loan business. On SMEs, there are solutions. In fact, later on, there'll be a risk panel where someone actually has a predictive model for risk on the SMEs and 40 to 50 million people on their database. So now, one final point here, anything that you want to add that's coming from the heart, not just from your current job, but from everything that you've seen on the transition to digital. Where do you see the biggest problems, or where would be your most important point that you want to leave this audience with? We all know from the regulatory point of view that we're not really threatened by tech giants because they have 27,000 regulations and a bank has 128,000. So there's not a big rush to become a bank by some of the tech giants, although they do get the banking licenses. But what other things do you want to just leave our audience with on this transformation at a time when everybody's trying to do everything at the same time and we don't know the outcome?
Okay, from the point of view of regulator, what we don't want to see is that the disruptive technologies will be too disruptive, So that the stability will be on the market, that it will be understandable what the new technologies brings, what are the challenges, what are the risks. We will definitely see the change in the regulation itself, because we, as you mentioned, Barbara, modular approach. Also, from the point of view of regulation, I think we should skip or just try to start to think about modular regulation that will not go too much into the activities, but will go into principles like customer protection, data quality, or data quality and data protection, risk of money laundering and things like that. So this debate is not ongoing. It's just an idea of thinking about the principles, but the regulation, I think should change to be more principle-based and to be more also open in the preparation because the dynamic of the technology is so fast. You have to do it like technology neutral, and it's this is very tough job to do something technology neutral. Yeah, so I think we have a quite interesting job in front of us. Thanks.
So my very eclectic last thoughts, right?
Yes.
I wouldn't feel very safe because there's so many regulations and the fintechs and the techs are not coming. I think they've been coming for a while, and if we didn't notice, then we have a problem and we need to revisit that problem. The truth is regulation can change in an instant, or somebody comes with a disruptive idea and is going to bypass a load of it, the regulation. So I wouldn't necessarily sit at home and feel safe by the firewall of regulation. But what is more important is that the fintechs and tech giants are bringing new benchmarks into what experience means, into what banking means, into what payments mean, right? Like the one time you experience Apple Pay or Google Pay, you don't understand why it takes so long for a bank to transfer funds, right? So it's something that in UX we call liquid expectations. It doesn't matter that that expectation came from somewhere else, you already expect it in your incumbent player.
Right.
So even if they stay or they go, it doesn't matter. They brought new benchmarks, and we will have to fulfill them, otherwise we're gonna fail. And I think the most important things we can start doing right now is start asking the right questions, because we're still not asking the right questions, and be very honest with ourselves, even if it's painful at times, the most important in business strategy, and get the right people on board. And then that's gonna be, a beautiful ride.
So I don't know, very simple remark, just to be everyone a bit more open. Everyone, regulators, traditional banks, digital lenders, regular lenders, whoever, just be open, try new things, don't be afraid, I think it's just, this is the driver for innovation. This is where technology, takes us forward, the whole humanity takes forward. So don't say things, I've been doing this business, or I was using my products this way for the last 10 or 15 years or something like that. Just be open, try new things, and see what you like or you don't like, I think that's very important.
From my perspective, everything is good digital, so we should go as well. There's no other way. What slightly concerns me is it might be a threat for the future is some regulation which we couldn't somehow, let's say, see, because this is not clear, and this is not only the local regulation but it's also European regulation. We are now, because they're starting after the PSD2 and they're now starting a second round about some data verification and all these stuff, which, to be honest, nobody knows how it will affect the business as such, and how we or all the let's say, industry should prepare on that. So it might affect us, whether there will be something, whether there will be even eco-ID in the future or not. So this is something what definitely somehow affects the industry.
Yeah, I have three small points. First one I already discussed about regulatory bodies. Try to work together and create this beautiful sandbox for Europe. I think there's a chance. But with that saying is also keep the level playing field equal between big banks and fintechs, because that's a lot of concerns we heard from our customers. Secondly, about being green. I think there's also a huge opportunity, and I know from State Secretary Kurila that he's hard working on it, and also together with the Dutch companies here in Slovakia. But also from banking perspective, I think there's also an opportunity to create green products together with government to subsidize on interest rate, or to loosen some of the restrictions for what you can lend, so the max lend calculations, etc. To emphasis also for local towns, or maybe on province level or on country level, to stimulate a green product, so that the Slovakia people can upgrade their houses with photovoltaic, etc., etc. And the last thing I would like to say is that keep fintech, keep our talented people here in Slovakia, because You were saying we were ruled by other countries, etc. But I want to switch it a little bit to the positive side, because what I have learned the last 10 years from Slovakia, they are extremely service-oriented people, and they know how to makať. Yeah, so remember this. Good luck today.
Well, that was a wonderful ending to a wonderful panel. I want to thank my expert panels here who have given us a little food for thought and reminded us that with the new benchmarks, with the dialogue between regulators, with new entrants, and we are just starting the journey that the tech community did maybe 18, 20 years ago, and we need to look forward in a more positive sense as to how these changes will affect us. So thank you very much for being part, and look forward to the next part of the program.